Krásné odpoledne, všechny vás tady vítáme. Jsem moc ráda, že tady můžu přivítat naše inspirativní hosty pro dnešní večer, který pro vás má být opravdu takovým setkáním a inspirací. Jestli jste se aspoň na moment zastavili, tak už víte samozřejmě, koho tady máme. Je tady s námi Lennart Björk, kterému také někteří přezdívají Mr. GANT. Welcome. Dále je tady Jeffrey D. Morgan, který působí v Ralpha Laurena. Hello. A dále tady máme také Marka Donatyho, což je italský architekt. Možná jste někteří teď nedávno navštívili jeho nejnovější realizaci v obchodu GANT na Chodově. Welcome. Budeme se bavit o inspiraci, budeme se bavit o módě a já budu mluvit v angličtině. Doufám, že budete rozumět mému akcentu a že budou naši hosté také rozumět mému akcentu a budeme vám taky dávat příležitost se k nám přidat v průběhu celého talku, takže se určitě nebojte se zapojit do naší diskuze, do našeho rozhovoru. And I would like to start with fashion. There is a microphones on the tables in front of you. And I would like to start with fashion because fashion is connecting all of you. Fashion design, selling fashion, and dealing with fashion in everyday life and business. So I would like to ask maybe first Lennart, what made you personally interested in fashion? How did it start for you? And what did you like about it, to work in fashion?
May I do a joke first? Money.
I guess you succeed.
How do I get this thing?
Just speak in it.
It's already on.
Maybe.
Try it.
Oh, yes.
Now, well, I had two really talented partners who were designers, and I did the business side of the thing. We all worked with the same things because we were a very, very small company from the beginning. We were only 5 people. But that was the start. We worked in textile before, but not as... the reason we started with GANT, we didn't start GANT, we started with GANT, was that we wanted to do a better product. We think that the essential thing about the GANT brand is that you do a really good product. You work on the product. Then the rest, the selling, the talking, the Amadeus, all that comes, but you've got to make a really good product first. So that was our interest, We wanted, in the old company, which we didn't own, we couldn't do as we pleased. The prices were too low. And to do a really good product takes a bit of money. It makes the products a little bit more expensive, but if you really work with them. So we didn't even call it design, we called it product development, because you were always developing the product. Yeah. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, it did. So for you, like, good fashion is basically good product. Yes. Architect and fashion. That's an interesting relationship. Very often connected, conflicting? No.
Yeah, all the time. Always. Well, we started with the fashion by accident. Well, actually, it was not an accident, it was a party. We went to a party and we got to know some designers. And talking, we said we were at the opening of a shop we designed. And the two guys said, they were twins, they are the owner of the Square, the brand. And they said, yeah, one day, if we're gonna make a collection and we will need an architect, we will call you. I say, we were drinking and dancing and say, yeah, same bullshit everybody says all the time at the party. And then after 5 years, we got a call.
After 5 years?
Yeah. And I say, we need an architect. No, it was a good drinking at the party. And then we started like that, and the relations with this brand keeps on going. And then of course, we got to know the fashion world a little bit more, so we are working with different brands, and it's not, okay, now we are used to, and we can manage to sit on the table and talk with the creatives, but it's not always easy, and it's because, architects pretend to be artists, and fashion designers pretend to be artists, so if you put two artists on the same table,
you get a little bit of friction, but it's fun. I mean, it works for now.
So, artists, your approach to it is art. It's some sort of creative thing. It's fun. You have like product, fun, art. I'll ask you to speak like this on the microphone,
yeah,
like
sorry.
if it is a champagne you want to drink,
already
straight from
had.
the bottle, and then everyone can hear you the best. So, what is fashion for you, Jeffrey?
Okay. I feel like Frank Sinatra.
Yes.
Well, first I want to say thank you to Amadeus and Petra for inviting me to be here today. I think this is a really wonderful experience, and I love the theme inspired by Vermont. I'm an American, and Vermont's a beautiful place, and this is a beautiful company. I was always attracted to creative businesses. I didn't start in the fashion business. I started in the magazine business, and and this was when magazines in the 80s and 90s were very important, and also good businesses. Today that industry has been really disrupted by digital media. But in any case, I started there, and I got into the fashion business by accident. And I have found in my life that a lot of the best things, a lot of the most important things happen by accident. And maybe it's fate, I don't know. But I got into the business, into the fashion business, because I was at an event, a party. And I happened to
was
meet...
the same party.
Yes. I was at a party, and I met Ralph Lauren. And so we struck up a conversation, and, similar to Marco, things gelled. And, from that introduction, he was curious about me, and he had some ideas about creating a magazine and media business for himself. So he wanted to talk more. And then, anyway, as we talked more and got to know each other better, at some point he invited me into his company. And so that's how I got into the business. Now, I was always interested in fashion. I don't know, I'm not a very fashionable guy, but I was always interested in it. And I learned, and I started to learn from inside the machine how you create great product. I agree with Lennart that it's all about the product. And anyway, I spent 16 years working there in the fashion business, and I wouldn't change any of it. So.
You mentioned the magazines, print magazines.
Yeah.
We now have a big thing in Czechoslovakia, actually, because we have now second issue of Czechoslovakian Vogue magazine,
Okay.
which is a big change, and
Yeah.
everyone is excited about
So
it.
they close in Italy and they open in Czechoslovakia.
Yes. So yeah, I would like to know
pretty
your
smart.
view on it. Is print magazine, is print fashion magazine still
Yeah.
inspiring for customers? Is it still important for brands such as Ralph Lauren,
Yeah.
GANT?
It
How
used-
important it is? How does it change? Really?
Yeah. It used to be the complete foundation of the communication of the company, and the brand was all about the fashion magazines, particularly Vogue. And so it was foundational and very important. I think that that's changed over time. Today, in fact, the importance of social media has really risen, and particularly with the younger generation. And the use of social media, and I don't mean just establishing a Facebook page or Instagram page for your brand, but people are, young people especially, are using social media to get the sort of fashion cues, their inspiration for maybe how they want to dress. And so I think it's very hard on the traditional print publications, to answer your question. And so, because that's the traditional way of communicating. And I think the younger generation is responding very differently. So I applaud the effort of Condé Nast, or to put Vogue here. And different markets act differently, so it could work. And I hope it does, by the way. But I do think that from a trend point of view in media consumption, it will be challenging. And, social media will be more important.
Yes.
And it's going to change also all the perception of the fashion, and also is going to have a very importance also on the spaces. And because these young, the way that the youngest, they use the social media, it's for us that we are architects. When the brands come to us now, they don't ask anymore about what I'm saying is pretty right and pretty wrong. So they don't ask anymore for the standard store. They ask for experience, and this is because the young people, they don't have experience in life almost anymore. They experience the buying and through the social media. So they are missing something of the fashion that before was the fashion show, the catwalk, and all the communication is changing. So now the brands are asking us to bring this experience that before probably was your personal experience going through the magazine or going to the fashion show. Now they ask us to bring this experience into the stores. So now the brands are trying to catch the trend, and the big brands are a little bit late. So the youngest brand are a little bit in advance. So they, like, I don't know, if you talk to the people from Supreme, they communicate in completely different way. They design the shops in completely different way. They experience the shop in a different way, and also they get inspired by it in a different way from Dolce & Gabbana or Gucci. And now the trend goes towards Supreme. So now all the big brands are trying to follow the small ones. Before was just the opposite. So there is a big shift, I think, in the
there is a big
fashion
shift in a communication, in approach, and also there is a shift in design, how the things look, how are they presented, and the brands that connect here, and also a lot of brands in the Vermont portfolio, they somehow communicate with or like play with preppy fashion, preppy aesthetics. How do you think this evolves and this changes now with the streetwear, with the workwear influence? What is the contemporary preppy style? Is it young? Is it for young people? How does this change? What is your opinion?
Well, over the time, fashion has
More
gone
close.
preppy and gone away from preppy. And with GANT, we sort of always held to our roots, which was the East American university preppy type. And when all the fashion went away from that, we were alone. And that was very good, because we had no competition in this area. And when all the fashion came in, the market came back. We weren't alone anymore, but we had the whole market. So we were always very healthy in sticking to our design line, and not changing. Obviously, the shirts were not always pink. They changed. Things changed, but the total concept didn't change. We kept that East American, and then you can say, well, America is not popular right now because they have a funny president, But I remember, when America was bombing in Syria, and you saw on television a Syrian guy running from the bombing with a big GANT on his face, So that didn't really hurt us at all, So even if America was very unpopular during the some wars or something. That didn't really, anyway, affect us, as long as we kept our line, you know.
I was reading in some interesting articles. I think this one was on Business of Fashion. It was regarding Ralph Lauren and changes and like maybe future changes a little bit in design, refreshment of the design, like still keeping the classics but redefining them. How it is now with these influences and the new pressures on the design of preppy and this like American style.
Yeah. I think that to be in the fashion business is to stay current with the preferences of the customer. And at Ralph Lauren, we of course had a preppy aesthetic. That was how we founded the company, on the preppy aesthetic. But we also had many others. You know, we had a much more modern concept as well. So we broadened our collection, in essence, of style cues and style designs to include different looks and different ideas for, you know, sort of the different stages of your life. If I'm living in New York City, in Chelsea, I want to dress appropriately for that environment. If I'm living in Burlington, Vermont, I want to have another sort of form of dress. So the company built a portfolio, in essence, of style cues. Having said that, all those style cues, though, have to be updated, and they have to be made current. And in some cases, it's very simple or subtle. It could be in the, you know, the specification or the fit of the clothing, like you would see in men's clothing today, is much more slimmer and trimmer, less material, and you know, it's completely different than it was, let's say, 15 years ago. It is important to stay current. And yes, there is some criticism right now of not just Ralph Lauren, but also many American brands, that they haven't been staying current. And, but that is critical. It really is. And now, having said that, I agree with Lennart that it's also important to be who you are. You know, just because preppy goes out doesn't mean that Ralph Lauren gives up preppy, just like GANT didn't give it up. But it's a complicated question, and those are, by the way, the most difficult decisions to make. Yeah. Those kind of design decisions in real time as you're trying to build your product and your line, to say, you know, where is the customer going to be? Where are they today? Where are they going to be a year from now when my product actually delivers?
The global markets today is also a very interesting thing, that preppy maybe gets criticism in some parts of the world that it's like too classic, too old school for someone, but some other parts of the world it will be the hottest thing right now. What, in your opinion, is the traditional preppy hotspots around the globe, and what is the new ones?
Are you asking me?
Not to me, for sure.
Well, okay.
You tell us.
I think Lennart also.
I hope Lennart would agree. I mean, I would say that traditional preppy hotspots are the U.S. I think Italy has a strong preppy tradition. Japan has a strong preppy tradition, at least in our case. I don't know, Lennart, with GANT, but...
I agree on Italy. I think Italy has always been the inspiration for the world. There's so many small brands that are really interesting, or even stores, you know. I mean, we always, every year we went to Florence, twice, 3 times a year, just to update us, you know, to be my partners who were designers and I, you know. And we even had a restaurant where they said, "Hi, Lennart," when you got in, because we were there so often. So I think Italy is very important. The States is very different. I mean, some of the non-Americans said, you know, it's New York, and then it's flyover country, and then it's San Francisco, you know. And people dress very fashionable in New York, but 2 hours out, they have, you know, white T-shirts and jeans. And a little bit of that is true, you know. I've been out in the boondocks a lot, and you could see sort of that New York and the West Coast is different from many of the American towns commercially, you know. And I think Ralph Lauren really didn't have that many stores in the States. They had the outlets, of course, but not that many stores. They usually worked with the department stores. So, yeah. So there's a big difference between the American market and the European and Far East market. And if I may be a little bit, it's also a big difference in sizes. I'm not saying anything more.
How is preppy style popular in Asia, for example? That's a huge market, developing market. Everyone tries to target how it is with preppy fashion and Asia. You mentioned Japan.
Yeah.
You mentioned Japan.
Mention what? Sorry.
You mentioned Japan.
I mentioned Japan, yes.
Well, we were quite successful for many years in Japan, and then the company we worked with, its mother company, had difficulties, so we disappeared from Japan. Really, but also Japan was inspiration for our designers, for sure, in their pureness, in their way they design things, you know. And I think they still are.
Yeah, and I would add, besides Japan, Korea also has a good. There's a market for preppy in Korea as well, and to some extent now developing in China. China is taking their cues though from Korea and Japan. So,
and we will soon have a new, totally unsatisfied market, North Korea. If you read,
that'll be amazing.
They sure need a lot of clothing there, that's for sure.
Or maybe they can export their style. The South Korea would dress in the North Korea style.
Yeah.
You never know.
You never know.
Could be the peacebreaker, yeah.
Yeah, you never know.
Peacemaker.
I guess we have probably some Czech audience here today. So if you want to join us and tell us what do you think, how is the preppy style doing in Czech streets in Czech market? Like, do you see that this changes, that it's getting more popular, or it's like some stable, really popular fashion, or is it changing? Everyone's scared. Okay, so I will go on. You mentioned a very nice thing, and that is some interesting happening in the shop, something that brings happening in the place where usually people just shop. The 50 years Ralph Lauren anniversary show was all about that. It was amazing experience. How do you think this will really change the shops? You already mentioned it changes them, but like, what can a good shop with fashion really become? It cannot become a nightclub or a restaurant or...
Yeah, it's already.
What is the border?
There is no limit. I think a lot of... all depends from the brand you're talking. And it could be also a restaurant. A lot of stores we design now, they have their own bar inside. Because now the store is not the place, it's supposed not to be anymore the place where you buy, but where you experience the brand. And to experience the brand, you don't necessarily need to buy something. You just have to feel the lifestyle and feel comfortable in that space. So now, for example, a lot of brands, they ask us to design a space where you pick up the things that you buy online. So it's just like an Amazon hotspot or whatever you call it. So it's then the needs, that's the function that are in the stores, they're changing. So before we were talking about how high has to be a shelf or the hanging, and now it's like how many SKUs you have to show, how many folding, closing or hanging. Now it's not about that almost anymore. I mean, it's changing a lot, and it's really about it's the fashion. It's getting really hard for them. The selling are really going down, and so they want to stick to the client. So they need to give something more than just clothing. You have to fall in love with the brand, and to fall in love with the brands that you use everything you have, and of course the space when you invite somebody at home has to talk about you, not about only the clothes you want to sell. It's more about experience. I mean, it's really they're desperately looking for that, but they don't know what is it. They don't know what they're talking about, and I'm also don't know what I'm talking about. I mean, what's an experience for a brand? I mean, for some brands you can say that, but for a brand like Gucci, what is an experience for Gucci? I don't know. I have no idea, and they don't even have an idea.
You also saw a lot of changes, like you brought the American brand to Europe, so you had to think about how to present American brand to European customers, and you worked in GANT for a long time, so you saw the changes happening. You still are in touch with fashion business, so how do you see the changes in how the shops work, how they look?
Well, I think there is very large changes. Jeff, what is the percentage of textiles sold in the American market on the internet? How much is that?
It's around 15% now.
15?
15, but it's been increasing every year for the last 20 years.
I mean, that's a remarkable change, you know. If I go back in my memory, which go a long way back, is that, you know, you had multi-brand stores when we started all over. They disappeared. They were even in the States when we started. You know, the GANT organization in the States had 55 salesmen that traveled the country and sold. That all disappeared because the department stores took over, and the multi-brand stores were slowly dying, I guess. And that happened in many markets, not everywhere in Europe at the same time, but slowly. And now we've seen the last, 10, 15 years, how department stores are starting to lose out. And of course, if in the States and in some of the countries in Europe, 15-25% of the textile is sold over internet. There's it's a really pressure for department stores or other stores. And the key issue here is prices, because once upon a time when you went out and bought something here or anywhere, you would look in one store and you would find basically similar price. Now you can actually go in and see the best price in the world for the product you're looking for, and the internet companies.
You don't even have to look for it. They comes to you.
Yeah, even that. But the internet companies have very low profitability. Even if they increase like crazy, their profitability is very low. Why is that? Because what can they compete with? You know, because you go in and you look at 5 different internet companies, and all of them will have some products on sale every week. And how the hell can you run a department store if everyone is having discounts all the time?
They open food hall.
Yeah,
it's true.
Yeah. So
food hall.
Yeah, well, something.
Food court.
Well, what you see actually.
So it seems that you all see the future of department stores quite grim.
Well, actually, I'm also in the business with shopping centers, because one of our companies work with that, and the trend is less textile in the shopping centers, and more restaurants and doctors and gymnastics or what have you, and less textiles, you know, really. And if I look at Sweden, the much more eating in restaurants, which means they take money from somewhere. So they travel internationally more, the consumer in our country, and they sure are out much more, you know. And the really young people, their inspiration is totally on the phone, you know. And their inspiration comes from people they follow on the internet somewhere. And they all have their favorites, you know. And you talked about the fashion magazines. Now much more important may be this girl somewhere who inspires thousands of young people when it comes to fashion or whatever, you know. This is a whole new world. It's going to be very interesting to see the next 50 years or so, right?
Yeah, I'm really curious to see it. Yeah, actually big changes happen, and we already touched the design and the way it develops, design of the shops now, but also the design of making the business, the design of clothes also, and the production of clothes. And the brands you work for are global brands that work in an international business. It's big, it's produced around the world. And lately, even here in Czech Republic, is more and more discussed topic of ethical fashion, sustainability. And I would like to know your opinion on it. How do your companies try to deal with it? And what is your personal approach to it? If you also think about it when you choose your fashion, how you choose. Because I was looking at some online resources, and I must say GANT and Ralpha Laurena are not doing so well in some of the charts of the green fashion. But maybe you can say something that will make that look a little bit better.
Yeah. I think for the large brands in the world, large fashion brands, textile brands, you know, they've optimized the business, and to optimize the business means to source your product in a place where you get the best quality at the lowest cost. And China and Asia have made that their core competency. And the benefit to the consumer is they get the product at a lower price with higher quality. Having said that, I agree with you. I think that particularly, again, among a millennial generation or a younger generation, social consciousness and an understanding of where the product is made and who's making it is becoming more and more important. I still think that generation is very price sensitive, though. But I would put, after price sensitivity, I would put things like being socially responsible as very high on their list of attributes that they would look for. And so I think big brands in the world that have been operating by sourcing their product in Asia are going to be challenged. And I think that younger brands and newer brands that are looking for uniqueness and difference can use source verification, meaning you know where the product came from and you know who made it. There's a brand in the U.S. called Everlane that essentially built their whole brand on that. When it's an online business, and when you buy their product, it tells you the factory where it was made, where the fabric came from. Now that's a $100 million business, by the way. So anyway, I do think it's important, and I think it's an important trend. And I think it's particularly valuable for newer brands and younger brands because they can use that to break in and make a difference.
And for established brands?
Pardon?
And what about established brands? When is it going to happen?
What brand?
Established brands.
Oh, established brands.
Yeah.
Well, again, we'll see now because Donald Trump is starting a trade war. And he may disrupt the whole supply chain, the global supply chain that's been established. And that could throw the whole thing open, I don't know. But again, I think it will be difficult for established brands to make an authentic, legitimate story around you know, social responsibility and source verification, because they're so locked into, you know, the established order. But I do see it as an opening for newer brands.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. I'm involved with, so since I left Ralph Lauren 2 years ago, and I'm involved with a small brand in the U.S. It's a wool company. They make merino wool base layer product. And there's many other brands out there that do this. And that, by the way, I think that's another trend of the future is natural fiber, because everything has gone synthetic. And it's just like everything. When everything goes one way, there's an opportunity to, you know, to exploit something different. And natural fiber, like wool, is, and particularly merino, is making a comeback. And particularly in performance product, meaning not just fashion, but you know, you're wearing it to when you're skiing, or you're wearing it when you're working out, you're wearing it when you're cycling, etc. Anyway, I'm involved with a small company, and the whole story of the company is about source verification. So it's the sheep that grow the wool that is used for the fiber for our fabric, all come from one ranch in Montana. And so all the fiber comes from that one ranch. That fiber is then made into fabric in the United States, not in China. It's made in the United States. And then we cut and sew in the United States. And again, you know, making the clothing in the U.S. is a business that has totally gone away. But anyway, so now we can say we are 100% American made, and we in fact made this the whole sort of brand story and the mythology around the story. Yeah. And so I think that's an opportunity. I think that's now it's a small business. You know, it's not Ralph Lauren.
It's interesting because a lot of millennials really care about it and they talk about it and share about it on their social media, but same time most of them wear sneakers that are actually made totally not ethical.
Right.
And that's okay, you know, but they will drink, I don't know, cappuccino with some like really not real milk, and everything is sourced locally and nicely, but with the sneakers, as they're trendy, it doesn't matter. So I think there is still some like weird dichotomies that this concept is kind of working with some things, but not with some other things.
There is some hypocrisy out there. You know, there are inconsistencies, but again, you know, the fashion of vulcanized sneakers, that is an important trend, and the fashionable people are wearing them, and
but Adidas now is making sneakers with recyclable bottles.
Okay,
So.
But it gets back to the same issue though, because there are no factories to make those anyplace except in Asia. You know, so it's like, well, if you want to be in the business, you know. I just noticed that Lennart and I were the only ones not wearing sneakers. Oh, okay.
This is leather. So what about animals?
I know.
You know,
I know.
Yeah, that's the question.
There's always an issue.
I know. There's always something.
And
always something.
And fashion is about making money, so
Yeah.
they care about these things to a certain level, and then they forget about it.
Let's talk about the last thing I wanted to talk about, and that's time and speed, because that also changes in fashion very much. How the things are done, how they're sold, how quick, how in which style. See now, buy now. Ralph Lauren still doing it, I think, with some part of their collections.
In other words, the fashion collection that walks the runway is now see now, buy now. It used to be the runway collection would be sold in 6 months later. So the industry is accelerating and compressing the time schedule.
Mm-hmm. So it seems it really works for the brand, because it was experiment like a few years back. People were talking about it, and we're gonna try it, we're gonna do it, and some people tried it just for a few seasons, and they're like, oh, it doesn't work for us. It's too stressful. So for Ralph Lauren, it seems it works.
Well, I think that the bigger trend is, speed to market. So if you think about developing or designing product, from the time it's in your head to the time that it's in the store, traditionally could be 18 months. Mm-hmm. Now think about how much can change in 18 months. So to the extent that you can compress that timeline and go from up here to actually in the store within, let's say, 2 months, then you've given yourself a big advantage because you're much closer, you're making decisions much closer to the time it's going to be sold. And that trend is never going to, that's a very important trend. That's Zara and H&M and those businesses have made, fast fashion has made this so successful. They have been successful because they can do that. Very difficult for the more traditional wholesale-oriented companies like Ralph Lauren to do that. But they're trying. I think in listening to the latest analyst call on Ralph Lauren, I think they are now compressing, at least for some product, into a 9-month time frame. But they're competing against Zara that can do it in some cases in 6 weeks.
Yeah, but
When they make in Spain.
Exactly. Yeah.
But do they have to compete with Zara? It's not a different. I think it's a mistake.
No, I'm not suggesting it's
No. I
exactly
think,
the same
in the
customer,
fashion.
but customers are responding. Like if you can come out more quickly with the relevant product, especially in trend, then you're going to have an advantage.
Yeah.
But also, it's possible to be much quicker. In the old days, you had to present it for a retailer and then sell it and deliver it later. Now, I take the example of Molly, who's in women's wear. They present a new collection every week on the internet. Sometimes they make products that they only sell in the internet. So they can really turn very fast, and also see the trends, of course. From the reaction on the internet, they get immediate trends. Before, you sold to a department store, 6 months later, the buyer told you it didn't sell so well.
Yeah.
Now you see that after 24 hours. God, it's really selling like hotcakes after 24 hours. And they can do things. This is interesting.
It's possible that this is the problem of the fashion. That's why they are in crisis, because they propose too many things too fast.
Word from the architect. Yeah, you might be right. This was my next question. I wanted to ask actually if there is still possible
Because there is a limit.
in fashion to create something very quality and long time durable that will be relevant for many years, or if it is not possible anymore. But I also wanted to ask about this thing.
You started talking about the quality.
Wait, I also wanted to ask because
Well,
Lennart mentioned a smaller
you can make
brand.
qualities even if you turn quickly, for sure. But one have to remember also when we talk about high fashion that H&M, for instance, 60% of their business they call basic. 60% of their total. So there's always
it's just
a lot of
replenishment
basics.
product.
Sorry?
It's replenishment product.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you always have a lot of basics year round, but the top line changes very quickly, and that is a kind of marketing today. I think that you present new things on the internet all the time.
Yeah, this is what I actually wanted to ask you because you have experience with huge companies and also with small companies that are starting. If you think that the speed we are now operating in fashion industry, if this like really quick turnover and sales, if it can work for young and small brands also, or if it is so quick and so hard to do with the time limits and production, everything, that it kind of is possible only for the big companies.
Well, if you listen to Jeff here with an American company that works and makes stuff in America, obviously the lead times are very much shorter than in the old days when you placed an order first with the fabric supplier in Japan and then you placed an order. After you've sold to the retailer, you placed an order with a supplier in China or something, and then it was shipped 6 months after. It's a whole different ballgame now, I think. So I think smaller companies will have an advantage in the future compared to the big ones. If I listen to Jeff, I get even more convinced about that.
And if a big chunk of your business is in wholesale distribution, meaning that the brand is selling to a multi-brand retailer, and then the multi-brand retailer is then reselling. So in that context, it's harder to compress the time frame. In Lennart's example of a vertical retail where you have a website and all you have to do, first of all, you're getting the intelligence, the retail sales daily. So, and you see what's selling, and then you say you want to chase after that and buy more of, bring more of that in. It allows those direct consumer businesses, it's an advantage for them.
Marco mentioned that maybe fashion is doing too much too quick, and that's the problem. That's why the price goes down. I would like to know how it is with design. You're designing fashion shops.
Yeah, that's why I
how
was
long
complaining,
does
because
the
they
design
always-
last? Like you design one shop, does this also get quicker? That it changes much quicker?
No, about the speed, there are two issues as an architect. And as an architect, it's like, I hate when they come to me and they ask, we need the shop in 2 weeks. That's the main problem. The nice part is, if you do something in 2 weeks, then it's going to last 2 years at least, no more. It's going to fall apart. And then means that in 2 years, I have to redo it, which is pretty nice. But I think if you want to do something, I don't say special, but if you look for something that has to stay, you need time because you need to think about it. And I think it's the same for fashion. It's true that they can sell fast, they can produce fast, but how many good ideas are coming out now? I don't know if they cares about it or not, but if you need time to produce something that stays for a long time. And if you compress the time, there are more chance that you go out with something that is not nice. And I'm talking about our office. Most of the time we are in a hurry. We are not so happy about what we are doing because you don't have time to talk to people and have a discussion and stop and reflect and think if you are making a mistake and correct it or just go. And that's okay, we are working a lot, you make a lot of money, but are you happy with what you are doing, or is the quality high enough? So.
For people who follow your social media or saw your book, saw your work, I don't think we can guess how long does it take to make such an interior. You already mentioned some very short time limit. Is it like this that you have to usually work in some weeks?
No, it's like it helps. Also luckiness and the teamwork. No, I mean it's normally now we take they come to us and in 3 months, let's say 3-4 months, the shop need to be open. So it's we are faster than the collection actually. So the shop is ready before the collection. But it's. I don't think this is a nice way to work, because you're not happy with what you're doing and the result is not that nice. In fact, there are a lot of nice shops around, but everybody is looking to the old ones. I mean, the old ones they say that's a masterpiece and has been here for 100 years. And they took 20 years to do it. Now you do something in 2 months and then everything changed too fast. At least is what I think. Sometimes it's good, sometimes you need to do like that, but you need some balance. I mean, sometimes you have to take time.
And the last question is regarding the time and the durability of the clothes. That is also changed lately a lot. The clothes are not so durable, it seems to me, as they used to be. But is there even a space for this anymore? Do you think this may be the thing? You work with the merino wool, with very quality material. Probably the sweater is meant to be longer than just like 2 seasons or something. Do you think... What is the trend in fashion regarding durability? Is it a long-time durability, or it is renewing, something that we can recycle, reuse?
There is, of course, changes, but one forgets that there's always been changes. But what is constant is that Homo sapiens has been around for 200,000 years, and we haven't changed much, So we may change our fashion, which is we still to have to do arms. You know, when we put on a shirt, we have buttons. I mean, there's a lot of common things, you know, and then there's a overemphasize sometimes. They say everything new right now. It's never been like that. I think it has. You know, it's always evolving in different ways. You know, the difference right now is that we're talking about a world market rather than local markets. That's going to change. But the people, 2 arms, 2 legs, most of them.
2 Adidas.
Very often. Yeah. So I mean, there's some constants there as well.
What do you think about durability?
I think, Marco talked about, when somebody says, give me a shop in 2 weeks, and he says, okay, it's only going to last.
They always pay twice. Double. They invoice twice.
Yeah, invoice twice. And he talked about how that you sacrifice quality for that kind of speed. And I think that's a risk in the product too. When you speed it up and cut corners, there's a risk to the product quality not being as high. There's a risk that in fact, it won't get delivered exactly in the right way. So there's a lot of danger to that. I think that, again, coming back to price, because you can't, if you're running a business, you have to be conscious of the importance of keeping your prices competitive. You don't exist in a vacuum. The internet, all you have to do is a Google search and bam, all of your competition is right in front of the consumer. So price is very important, and because there's so much pressure on price, there's been a trend in taking it out of the garment, taking it out of the quality, either out of the fabric or the make, meaning taking the quality out as a substitute for lower price. I think that's a trend that continues. I don't see it changing really. But again, I come back to that's an opportunity for a smaller brand or a newer brand to come in and be different, because you can come in with the idea that, oh, wait a minute, actually our quality, we're not going to do that. We're not going to sacrifice that. So, but I think it's trend-wise in the business, it's going to be, that's a very important trend, and you would any brand would be taking a lot of risk trying to go against the pricing trend. The deal. People want the deal.
Okay, so actually this ends up quite nice for the small brands and for the new things happening in fashion, because there is a hope for them and hope for the next generation who likes fashion and preppy fashion and quality. So thank you so much for this meeting. I would like to give a space to the audience. If someone wants to ask something, you can do it now, or you can do it later in some lesser formal setting. Thank you so much, Lennart Björk. Thank you so much, Marco Donati, and also Jeffrey D. Morgan.
Thank you, Právě.
Thanks.